Hi, my name's Victoria and I'm the silver jewellery tutor for Abingdon and Witney College. Today I'm going to show you what's possible to make in one of our courses. I'm keeping it a bit Christmas themed because it's that time of year. As you can see here on my peg, I have some silver snowflakes that I've been cutting out. This one I'm going to add a gem. They're all different patterns and they're all cut with a jeweller's saw and a thin blade. These are all possible to make in the course, but today I'm going to show you how to make a larger one for a Christmas tree decoration, which will be this size on some copper. What you see here is my jeweller's bench, just a little view of the setup. All of this equipment we have at the college for you to make a similar setup and work with. So I'm going to focus on what's called my bench peg, which is what jewellers do the majority of their work from. So I'm just going to move these pieces off as we're going to start something new. What I've done is go onto Google and search for snowflake vector. If you put vector in, it comes out with a nice clear crisp image like this that you can then print out and cut out. And we're going to stick that onto my piece of copper here. I'm using copper because I don't have any silver left, and also copper is what we start with when we're working at Abingdon and Witney College, as it's less costly and it's also pretty. So the first thing you want to do is, you'll notice that it comes with a plastic backing. You want to take that off because it just gets in the way and makes your sawing more complicated. So just peel that off and it reveals a really nice, you probably can't see the reflections, clean surface which we're going to work with. As you see on the other side, it's got more scratches. So if your metal has scratches like that, then we take it out using a variety of different wet and dry paper. It's like a type of sandpaper. And all you would do is take your copper over the sandpaper and just smooth out those scratches. And you do that all over the piece with different grades of the wet and dry paper until it's looking smooth. But today, because this is brand new, I'm just going to turn it over and use the clean side. So to stick your image onto the metal, the best thing to do is to use double-sided tape. It works much better than glue. The trouble is with glue, it can dry and peel off, and then you lose your image and you have no line to follow anymore, and we get into a bit of a muddle. So what I'm going to do is stick a whole length of the double-sided tape onto my copper, put it up in a corner, I may need a double piece because it's quite a big snowflake. Stick that down, cut a little extra strip if necessary. You want to cover the whole piece with your metal. One of the first projects I do at the college is a saw piercing exercise. We basically cut out a jigsaw pattern of straight lines, curves, zigzags to practice your saw piercing, and then we solder it back together again, which is another exercise. But today I'm just going to show you for fun how to cut out a snowflake. So then peel off the other side of the tape and line up your snowflake. Don't put it in the middle because that's a waste of metal and you have to cut in to reach to cut around your snowflake. So put it up in the corner and we can access it from the edge, and that way we don't waste all of this metal here. It's especially important to do that if you're using silver, as it's a lot more expensive. So I'm going to stick it up in the corner here. and then just press it down and it's ready to go. With glue it can slip and it can move around and you have to wait for it to dry, but that is basically ready. What I'm going to show you now is how to load your saw frame with a small blade like this one. What you have to do is turn the blade round so the teeth are pointing outwards and downwards. If you can't see it like me, you can run your finger down it and it should feel smooth. If it jaggeds, then it's the wrong way up. So we're going to pop this in. At the top, and then we're going to tighten it up at the bottom. And as we tighten it up at the bottom, you want to put pressure on your saw so it snaps in nice and tight. You don't want a slack saw blade, otherwise it won't cut properly. So that's perfect. Now what we're going to do is start cutting. The next thing I use is a little bit of wax. You just run it down your saw and that makes the cutting much easier. So now my saw blade's loaded, I'm just going to cut off the excess metal from this side so we just concentrate on the snowflake. You want to keep your work held onto the peg with a firm hold with your left hand. You will find it takes a bit more strength than you think. Then we can free the piece away from this and just concentrate on the snowflake. What we have here is also a centre decoration which I want to cut out, so I'm going to also show you how to drill holes in here to thread the saw through to cut out this space. So the best way to do this is to mark with a Sharpie where you're going to drill your hole as a guide, and then what we're going to use is a steel block. Put your piece of copper on the steel block, and what I'm going to use next is something called a centre punch. It makes a little divot where these marks are going to be for the drill to go in so it doesn't slip. So let's do that now. Just with some pressure, you click down onto it and it makes a nice little divot for your drill piece. All the way around. This also takes quite a bit of strength. Squash that in. Last one. And now you can see these little divots are ready to drill. It's best to drill your holes first before you cut away too much of the metal, because then it becomes more fragile. So then what I'm going to use is my pendant drill, one of these. You can also do it by hand with a pin vise. We use both at the college. So here's a little drill piece that's going to tighten up into here. Make sure that's secure. Again, then you can run your drill over a little bit of wax just to lubricate it a bit. On your peg, again as straight down as possible with your drill, we're going to go through these holes. Take it slowly. And we're through one of them. Go around all of those until they're done. It does help if you have a new drill. think that's all of them. Oh, one more. And then that's ready. So now I'm going to start saw piercing all this excess metal away and cut out the snowflake. What I'm going to do first is remove the middle of these petals here. Again, because if I don't do that now, once this metal's gone, it's more flimsy and more delicate. So it's best to remove the inside first. How to do that is you want to take your saw frame, open up the blade again, and what we're going to do is thread the saw through the hole and cut out the little petal. So now it's onto the saw, tighten it back up again. And we're ready to go. I hope you can see that. So now what we're going to do is cut out the petal. Again, with a nice straight saw, just cut away the inside. When you cut a point or turn a corner, you want to go up and down in the same place a few times to remove the excess metal, enough so you can pivot the saw and go the other way. Otherwise you don't get a sharp angle. It's not perfect, don't worry, we're going to tidy it up later as well. Move your metal around with your saw as well to help you get the right shape. There's one petal removed, so then we take that off and do the same for all the rest of them. Thread it through, tighten it up, and pierce. As much as possible, I'm trying to keep my fingers behind the work because you really don't want to slip. It's not a race, we can take it slowly, and that way it will be more well done. With this snowflake, I'm also going to think about adding a texture to it by using a hammer to make it a little bit more sparkly, and that will come when we've finished saw piercing. You could also think about adding a gem to the centre to add some extra sparkle. Gem setting is one of the practices that I do within the course at the college, as people always like adding colour to their work and adding a bit of sparkle. What we have to remember is that this is handmade and we're not machines. Well, of a sort. But it's not going to be 100% perfect, so don't worry if it's not entirely as the image. I hope you're not getting bored. Could really do this on a time lapse. Speed it all up. But this way you get to see the process. Up and down at the tip, enough in the same place just so you can turn your saw blade and come back down the other way. Again, this end up and down in the same place. Pivot your saw, turn your work and cut out a petal. Three more. Make sure that your saw remains tight. If it's slack, it's much harder to cut and could break, so you may need to just re-tighten it and give it an extra little bit of wax to help you cut through. Copper is a much stickier metal than silver, and also here we're cutting through paper and glue on the double-sided tape, so it makes it a little bit more tricky. But there's no reason why beginners shouldn't be able to do what I'm doing here. Not so perfect, that one, but we'll go on. Do long strokes. You don't want to be like this, all too fast with your saw. You want to take it nice and slowly and do longer strokes using the majority of the blade. One more. The class at Abingdon and Witney College is mixed ability, so beginners and intermediate are all welcome. We all work well together. Just the last corner on this petal, and then we can start cutting out the actual snowflake. What we could do with this one is that here I have a little stone in a setting, which I would also show you how to make, and we could add a gem to the centre of it here to for a bit more sparkle. I think that would be nice for a Christmas decoration. It also, if you haven't cut out your petals perfectly, it can disguise a few little imperfections as your focus would be more on the gem. That's just a little trick. So now we're going to cut out the rest of the snowflake here. Again, tighten up your blade. Make sure it's nice and taut. Give it a little ping and an adjustment if it needs one. That's what you're looking for. Run a little bit of wax down your blade, and then we're going to start saw piercing the rest of this out. Again, find the piece of the snowflake that's closest to the edge of the metal. You don't want to say necessarily come in from here, because then you've got to cut all the way down this bit of metal to reach the snowflake pattern. So I'm going to start here on this one. I'm going to try and do it in one, but you never know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter if it isn't done in one, but it's quite fun just to give yourself a challenge. So again, with a saw, an upwards motion to get your teeth in, and then start sawing. Saw to the edge of your pattern, not onto the actual line, because it can make it too thin, and also you might want to do some filing later to tidy it up. So I'm just going to go to the outside of the printed pattern here. I also need my other glasses. So if you do come to class and you need reading glasses, don't forget to bring them, because with jewellery we're working on a small scale and it gets quite hard to see what we're doing. The other thing I like to do is to use a little brush to brush away the dust that's created with the saw cutting. So just a little paintbrush, you can just move that away, and then your lines are more visible again. Turn the work with your pattern and the saw at the same time. I'm using here is about 1 millimetre thick. If it's anything thinner, especially if we were working smaller, it would become very fragile, especially with this sort of a pattern, as there's lots of sort of frondy bits that can potentially break. So you really want to work in a metal that is strong enough to withstand this sort of a pattern. So for that reason, anything under 1 millimetre is too fragile. Now my snowflake is cut out, we'd go on to the next stage, which would be to take off this paper, clean the entire piece with the emery papers that I showed you earlier, file in between all these little nooks and crannies and generally clean and polish it. Then potentially we'd go on to setting a stone like this one and putting it in the centre, and lastly we'd attach something like a little bail like I have here as a hanger to either make it into a pendant or something that we could thread a ribbon through to hang onto a Christmas tree. But all of that would take another half a day. So really this is just a taster to show you of what is potentially possible within a short time frame within the class, and how you could all go away and make something nice and sparkly to go home with. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and that you'll think about signing up to an adult learning silver class in the future. Thanks a lot. Bye.